Hey, it's Robert Clickybeard, the host of the Commercial Landscaper podcast. These podcasts challenge you to grow as a leader, to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone, and to 10x your company. I really encourage you to enjoy the show, share it with teammates, fellow business owners, and subscribe. That helps us grow our community. This podcast is sponsored by BUM Data, helping commercial landscapers turn labor data into smarter decisions with intuitive, actionable analytics. Check them out if you're ready to control your labor costs and boost your margins. When you mention Wilson T60, you'll get 1 month free subscription to check out this amazing software. Hi, this is Robert Clickybeard with the Commercial Landscaper podcast. Really excited today to be joined by Ashley. Ashley, nice to meet you.
Hi, Robert. Thank you for having me.
So for our audience, why don't you talk about a little bit about your background and then maybe some of your career over the last, 5-10 years or so?
I've been at Sun Valley or with Sun Valley now for 14 years. And, prior to joining the landscape industry, I actually was in corporate event planning and marketing type roles and organizations. So I did not go into, my young adult life with hopes and aspirations in horticulture or landscape. It just kind of happenstance. Prior to coming to Sun Valley, I was really looking to exit the corporate event planning space. I had small children at the time, and evenings and weekends were not necessarily the best for my life at that time. Little did I know there was lots of evenings and weekends in landscaping, but that's for another conversation. So I ended up looking kind of seeing what my options were. I didn't really want to go back into a corporate type role. I knew that I was good at helping small and medium-sized businesses. I was introduced to Paul through my husband at the time. And we met over coffee. And, before our second meeting, he was handing me his P&L statements and sheet and selling me this vision essentially of, I really want to grow. I need help to do that. I'm kind of tapped out, as a solo owner. I started working with him part-time and, doing some business development, but also literally doing everything else. I was helping him answer the phones. I was billing customers. I was sending leads out to a couple of the guys that we had doing estimates for us and things like that. So when we were smaller like that, both of us had to wear so many hats. And what a great way to learn for somebody who is not from the industry. So it was a crash course in, how the landscaping world worked. So then I went shortly after that, I finished out some of my contracts on the corporate event planning side and just really dove 2 feet full bore into the landscape business. And Paul and myself, we've always been very aligned with the vision on where we wanted to take the company. And it's been kind of a roller coaster ride ever since then. Yeah. We merged with Hugh Morton, who owned Sun Valley, which is essentially started out as a rock yard. So we merged Paul's maintenance business and Hugh's landscape business back in 2012. Okay. And we've been growing pretty quickly then. And I love this industry. This is what I was made to do. I just didn't know that this is what I was made to do.
That's awesome. I might be wrong here, but I would imagine coming from that corporate planning, event planning business, probably the two key elements there are communication and, just I suppose multitasking, being able to sort of plan things. And I think those two different skill sets probably help you set you up for success with Sun Valley.
Well, there's many similarities, which you wouldn't really think. But I remember when I started to take over our landscape construction side of the business and worked on the scheduling and planning and working with subcontractors, it's no different in event planning. You are working with subs. Your whole corporate event planning space is you're working with caterers and DJs and different things. And so just being able to apply that skill set to the project management side of our business was very helpful for me. Very similar.
So talk me through the company growth journey. You obviously went in at probably a lower revenue and now it's a different beast now. So talk me through that piece, and then maybe what are some of either the challenges or milestones that you can remember as you went through that journey?
Yeah, as I look back over the last 14 years, I think for, approximately the first 5 to 6 years seemed easier for us for whatever reason. I know that, I was way more focused on marketing and getting out in the community and getting our name out there. And so I think we had a lot of organic growth because of that. I think some of the bigger turning points really what has been trying to scale our sales team and find, those sales leaders that we need. And also really honing in on what book of business do we want, like on the maintenance side of our business. We used to do properties, that were flip properties as an example. And we used to do multifamily apartment complexes and things like that. And it wasn't profitable. Two, our employees didn't like working on those properties. And three, those are great referral sources for us, right? So it really wasn't doing much for our business. I think the biggest turning point for us was, a few years ago when we stopped kind of doing all of those things and said we had to say yes to the right kind of work. And I know maybe that's cliche and a lot of people say that, but that's hard. I mean, that takes years to turn around a book of business and change the property type and the client types that you're working with. It takes years of work and strategy and dedication to that.
100%. And a lot of people don't necessarily, I suppose, recognizing, obviously a lot of us now have, great software systems, Boss, Aspire, whatever's out there, to be able to go in and analyze the data and really truly find out who are your core customers, who are the ones who not only pay you the most money, but also they end up being raving fans to you. A lot of people don't necessarily go through that exercise. So what was, I suppose, the trigger for doing that? There must have been some type of event that happened or realization that we need to move away from the shotgun approach to focusing on our true clients that's going to make the company grow.
Two things that really stuck out in my mind at that time were, one, a lot of the feedback was that employees just didn't take a lot of pride in some of these properties that we were serving, right? That was like a big eye-opener for me. And then happenstance, we had an employee who kind of a disgruntled employee that left that ended up taking one of our relationships, which was a huge part of our maintenance business, kind of like the flipping houses thing. So that was a big turning point, but it did take us a few years after that to, like I said, to today, which our book of business looks nothing like it did 5 years ago, and that took a lot of, like you're saying, analyzing the data, looking at the properties, and then defining that for our team and communicating that down the line of why we want to do this and why we want to say no to certain types of work and things like that. So that took years of, educating our team and communicating and developing new relationships. Right.
That's great. And on that point, again, I come across companies that don't necessarily, they don't look ahead enough. They don't look at that 1, 3, 5 year vision, and then communicate that with their team and get their team to get behind that. So is that something you went through in terms of, hey, these are our core clients we want to go after? Part of that journey is these are the type of work we're going to be going after, and these are the reasons why. And
yes, yeah, I think it starts with creating that vision. And you talk about the 1, 3, 5. We have a 1, 3, and a 10. But when we're looking at that 3 year, I think we look at that and we really describe visually and like tangibly what that looks like.
Right.
Through with our leadership team and our management team and say, these are the changes that will have happened for us to look like this, in 3 years. And I think the important part then is like getting that down to the field level, because everyone has to know what direction, we're going to be rowing the boat in and why. And I think we do a really good job of that. We do quarterly town hall meetings, not only to talk about feedback and trends, but to talk about this stuff, to consistently reiterate where we're going and why. And I think that communication, and it has to be consistent. I think sometimes most people need to hear something 8 to 10
100%.
times for it to finally stick. It was so funny.
100%.
We had like a leadership meeting, I want to say last month, and pick on one of my teammates, Sean, but Paul said, he said this thing that he says all the time, which is like, service is our strategy. Like, this is what we're doing. Everyone can landscape, but service is our strategy. And Sean finally goes, oh my gosh, it just finally clicked with me. And we've been saying this for like the last year and a half, and I was awesome. Like, I got goosebumps because I was like, yes, you get it now. Like, he's like, I totally don't know why I didn't hear that or that didn't resonate with me until right now, but it was very honest and transparent about that. It's about being consistent with your messaging and your strategy.
You're right. I think just it has to be constant messaging, visually, verbally, and finally people will get it. So talk me through, there's probably some people listening on the podcast here saying, I can't even think about changing my client base. It's going to be so disruptive. I'll lose money. It's almost like scary to them. Hopefully give people peace of mind. Yes. what that looks like and some of the things they should be doing to maybe prepare for that, either before or going through that.
Yeah, it is very scary, especially if you are a small business. And, what is scary to me is having like most of your eggs in one basket, for example. And so I think that that's something that most business owners should consistently be evaluating, because you don't want a third of your commercial business to be with one relationship. I think there needs to be diversity, and to have, limit your risk, because we all know that some of those relationships can change. My biggest piece of advice would be to map it out of what that transition would look like. So if it's, okay, I don't really like working for X, Y, and Z clients. I don't, whether it's in the relationship or, you're not really making a good margin on those. You have to just identify pros and cons of that property and then map out a plan A and a plan B. Maybe plan A is higher risk and here's why, and maybe plan B is a lower risk plan. And then for us, it's just talk about it, meet with multiple people, get opinions, even running things by my husband. Sometimes he's an outsider looking in, so he has really good perspective. So hey, how does this sound? Do we sound crazy? Does this sound too risky? And then you're saying, analyze the financial side of it. It might feel scary to client, I can no longer work with you. But what we saw is that we fill that business real quick, regardless of whether we knew that, yes, we had prospects in line and we knew kind of the certain types of businesses that we wanted to go after. What you've realized is it makes room. Once you get rid of those people that are maybe not making you money or taking up too much of your time, you realize that the right things just fall in your lap because you have more time to focus on it.
Yeah, 100%. And there's also an element of if you have got some hours available, then you could focus on the clients that do take care of your higher profit margins or something. Let's take a minute to thank our sponsors. Urcher is a life brand born from grit, founded by Zach Strausser. The mission is clear: to raise $1 million for the trades by supporting vocational training across North America. Urcher makes tough, smart gear built for landscaping and snow professionals who work hard outside every day in all conditions. Their apparel puts safety first, helps crews look sharp, and honors the pride in their craft. Every purchase has purpose, fueling training programs and building a resilient workforce. Urcher isn't just workwear, it's a culture of respect, resilience, and results. When you contact Urcher, mention Wilson 360 and Zach and his team will take well care of you. As you go through that journey, how do you get your team on board? Because, it's probably, you'd mentioned you're scared of it, but when you have, early employees relying on that work coming in, how do you sell that to them?
I think getting buy-in from the beginning by asking the feedback is important. So, take our snow removal business as an example. We have every year meetings leading up to even RFP season to talk about production has strong opinions on what properties they want to work on and what they don't, right? They have very strong opinions. And I think those are important. And, we do look at those, and maybe some of them are logistically just not a good idea for our snow removal operations as an example. So we had just met as a team a few weeks ago to talk about some of these things, all right, who are some of the clients that we maybe want to offboard? It's not necessarily working out for X, Y, and Z reasons. So I think the feedback at the field level is super important because I think sometimes that can get missed, right? I think sometimes you get tunnel vision and you forget the people out there doing the work are the ones who have the best ideas and the most 100%. Logical opinions. But yeah, I would that's really what we try to remember. It's all right, we've got to get buy-in from the field. We've got to get the feedback from the field before we even start talking about what are our options.
Right. No, I agree 100%. Now, talking about people, I always find that when you go through that growth stages, that 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, a lot of the key elements there are around people, making sure, you got the right people on the bus, in the right seats, doing the right things. Talk me through, that transition through your company, and also how do you build for future leaders, almost like building that bench per se?
So I think we're dealing with some of those challenges, sort of having a leadership talent gap, I would say. And I think any small business deals with that problem at some point or multiple points along the way. But up until about 2 years ago, we were able to really get through our growth with Paul and I's leadership, and we were able to do it pretty well. And what we're realizing now, or what we have realized, is we cannot continue down this path. So what we've been working on is one, identifying, who's on that bench, who could be on that bench, and then identifying what do they need to develop them further, and how can we get at giving them the tools and resources that they need to be better,
right?
And who has that capacity for leadership, essentially focusing on who the people are in those seats, or the could be's, really working towards, like, again, it has to do with vision. Like, who is bought into that vision? Who believes in that vision? Who wants that vision? And, we've got a really strong leadership team now, but what we're finding is we're not quite sure, can we get to the next level with what we have right now? And so we're really focused on answering some of those questions and meeting with our team. And we're being very transparent about these conversations. We talk openly about, like, this is what the next level looks like, guys. Like, are we ready to get here? Or we've got X, Y, and Z in our way before we can even get to that point. So, one example is our maintenance director, Noah. I've worked with him for 6 years. Awesome person. This is his third season overseeing our entire maintenance division. And we just added an overhead position under him this year. And the goal for that was so that we could continue to develop his leadership abilities. And he has capacity for more leading and field facing things and less like administrative, like schedule board and Aspire, work ticket management, stuff like that. So, and that's been a challenge because one of his blind spots, and he knows this, is delegation, right? And so you find that you're very challenged in that, like, you think your problems are going to be solved, right, when you get more employees or more help. But what you don't realize as a leader sometimes is that, oh, hey, that's a lot of work for you. And that puts you in an uncomfortable position sometimes because you have to let go and you have to train and you have to follow up. And so he's learning that right now, which is great. And I love challenging him on these things. But that's just one example of, we're finding, like, wow, we need leadership and we need leadership fast.
No, I mean, it is always a challenge because I feel a lot of people will put people in a leadership position because they were good at their function before. They don't necessarily give them any type of training, and then they wonder why they fail. Maybe lose their job, but it's not necessarily their fault. So I love your idea around identifying those people. I think the key thing is then, what do we need to do to develop them into the future leaders? Whether it be internal, external leadership development. So there's a lot of things in there. But I love how you're having conversations with people, because I've also recently talked to a couple of people who were moved up into a leadership position, realized how hard it was, and then almost like disselected themselves because they just didn't enjoy the politics and all the other pressure around it. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily see that piece. They see the money and maybe the title.
It's almost kind of a slap in the face sometimes when you realize the level of responsibility you have on your shoulders, right? For us, we just reorged a few years ago and put in these divisional director positions. And so we struggled a little bit with, the person that was going to head up our landscape division. And so what we decided when we did that reorg was that I was going to do it. And that was a challenge, right? Because you wear many hats and you're not, doing all the hats fully. You're just kind of doing the best you can kind of thing. So, but I was able to learn a lot. And so I think that did help me once we were ready to put somebody in that seat to understand what the skill set, the characteristics that we needed in that position. So as a business that's growing, I think sometimes it is good to kind of get your feet wet a little bit and get in the trenches, and so that you understand it a little bit more. So that's one thing that really helped me.
How about any other challenges when you went through that, that 5 to 10 million range? Anything that sort of stands out in your mind? And I'm partly thinking about, I'm seeing so many new business owners that are starting a business, they're quickly scaling up to 5. You're using podcasts, they're using all this other, YouTube and everything, mentors. But then, suddenly they get to 5 and they're struggling to find out what they need to take to take it to 10 million. Anything that stick out in your mind that going through that growth phase that you could share?
Yeah, I think for us, it was employee retention, 100%. We struggled, right before COVID and kind of during COVID and after COVID for like a year. I mean, it was a struggle to keep employees. I think one year in particular, which I believe was, I want to say 2021, we turned over 60% of our Mo team. Like, we just did not.
Wow.
We were struggling. We lost the Mo team leader. We had like me and Noah doing it as the interim, and we just had just not good talent, not good people, not good culture fits. Like, we were just hiring the wrong people. So it took us a couple of years to rebound from that. Yeah, that's literally good people, hiring better, having better hiring practices, focusing internally on what you're doing to retain your people, be competitive, spend the extra dollar. It's worth it. That is, to me, worth it for an A player versus a C player.
I suppose part of that is also the onboarding.
Yep.
Not only paying for, maybe paying above the norm, but to find somebody really good, that A player, but also then have a solid onboarding system.
Have a solid onboarding system, which I think is difficult, right? When you're a small business, you don't have these systems in place. You don't have all this, which is why I kind of love the green industry, because everyone that I know in this industry is just so giving and helpful. And so I've been able to lean on friends and associates in the industry to help me through navigate some of those things. But one other turning point for us was actually implementing an HR leader role in our company. And that was just 2 years ago. And we have, our retention has never been better since we did that. So it is more than paid for itself from just, like you're saying, an onboarding perspective, and having one person, a department that our employees can go to that can help navigate some of those relationships, and then helping us through some of these policies and things. Like I feel like we're changing policies every day, but they're outdated, right? Some of this stuff was written for a company 13 years ago, where we're just different now. So
no, that's awesome. Yeah, especially if you have great employee retention. That could just make it really great consistency. You get some great results. I had some of the best years of my business because I had some great people and they stuck around.
Absolutely.
They knew the system, they knew how to sell, so helped tremendously. Any other parting words before we finish up here, Ashley?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I would, my biggest, I guess, I know that a lot of business owners listen to your podcast, and I would just say, lean on your network of people. If you don't have a network of people, get a network of people. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody and ask some questions.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. How can people reach out to you if they have maybe some questions about your journey, want to find out a little bit more? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Shoot me an email, add me on LinkedIn, Ashley Paladino. I'm always an open book. So, and I love meeting new people. I just had a call with a friend a couple of weeks ago that I met at Leaders Forum. So it's just creating some of those relationships. So I'm always open to having conversations.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Ashley, such a pleasure having you on the show today. Really appreciate it. Good luck with your future journey.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ashley. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Commercial Landscaper podcast. I hope you're walking away with some great nuggets that you can immediately apply to your business, whether you're in leadership, operations, or you just want to show up every day with that Ironman mindset. Remember, growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens with intentional moves, bold conversations, and surround yourself with the right people. If you found value today, subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with others. And again, don't forget to check out Wilson-360.com. We have digital courses from account management, operational excellence, leadership development, or some of the other coaching packages we offer. Anyway, huge shout out to our sponsors. Thank you very much. And I'll leave with this. Have a pure, dead, brilliant day.